Hello and welcome to the third coding walkthrough video of the development of Fortitude, no longer called Delta V, it's Fortitude now, for reasons that are explained in my weekly walkthroughs. Now, this week has been quite an exciting one actually, because we've essentially fundamentally changed how the game works, how the prototype works anyway. And it's easy just to demonstrate it, frankly. I'll hit play and I'll show you what we got. As you can see, we now have a playable astronaut. Oops. Just pretend you didn't see that. But yeah, we've now got a playable astronaut in the game who has his own movement system, as you can see, and he is also completely independent of the Fortitude ship. Oh, and you can now zoom the camera in and out manually rather than pressing M. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. And what I'll also do is show off just what this astronaut can do. If we go close to the Fortitude here... Actually, no, I tell you what, we won't... Ooh, momentum. Very nearly died a bit of a death there. If we go over here, we're a bit far away from the ship here. Whatever will we do? I know. Let's remote control the ship and bring it to the player. Now, I know you're impressed, so let me just impress you a little bit more. Transferring control back over to the astronaut, heading over to the ship, and we are now piloting the ship. How cool is that? Admit it, you're really impressed. Ooh, things aren't going so well. Pull that back. Damn it. Come on. Come on, I was doing so well. Come here. Oh, I hate this game. Yeah, and as you can see, everything is fine. But yeah, so that's the main addition to this week's update. This playable astronaut. So the perspective of the game has been entirely shifted to represent the astronaut now, rather than the ship. The default thing rests on the astronaut. I worded that really badly, but what I'm trying to say is that the default viewpoint of the game is now from the astronaut's perspective rather than the ship. Because the ship is now a vehicle rather than being it's still a playable game object, but rather than being the central playable game object. So yeah, so you can fly around this little guy, and as you can see in the top left, you've now got a new variable in the GUI, or GUI, suit fuel. So the player himself, the astronaut, has his own little fuel system that gets used up as you fly around. And then if you go close to the Fortitude, as you can see, the suit fuel starts refueling at the expense, though, of the ship fuel. We'll go all the way up to 100% there. There we go. So the astronaut can refuel his own suit by just bringing in proximity to the Fortitude. But here's where things get interesting. In order to refuel the Fortitude, you've got to head over here to the refuel cloud as you did before. But things have changed. I'll just slow down just a bit here. Getting into close proximity. There we go. That's close enough, I think. But yeah, now you have to use the astronaut to refuel the ship, rather than just sitting in the refuel cloud, all nice and safe in your little ship. You have to get out now and face the perils of outer space and refuel manually. As you can see, as soon as I enter the cloud, this aura comes on, which it's just a visual thing to let you know you're refueling the ship, and the ship is being refueled, as you can see there. So yeah, we made this decision because we felt it was a lot scarier to be outside the safety of your ship in, the dangers of outer space, because obviously you'll be in a gas giant, because that's where refueling happens primarily in the game. So we felt it'd be a lot scarier if you were playing as the astronaut to refuel rather than being in the ship. And as you can see, the ship has now refueled, so we can head back out and rejoin the Fortitude. There we go. So yeah, that's the main, well, all of the additions to this prototype. To run through them again, playable astronaut, changes to refuel system, changes to how the camera works, you can now zoom in and out, as well as remote control of the ship itself. Oh, actually, one more thing I forgot to cover. Let's bring the ship back over to the player. Alright. Should mention as well, if you're heading towards something at a high speed, splat, you will of course die. And the ship is still there in pieces, but there's nothing you can do, because the player, the astronaut, has died. So don't get out of the ship when you're heading towards something. But yeah, so those are the primary things that have been added in this prototype. So what I'll do now is just go through all the code and explain how it all works. This probably will take some time. This is the main addition, the foot navigation script. It is the opposite of the, the space navigation script, because that's the one that has the controls for the ship, whereas foot navigation has the controls of the player while they're in space anyway. As for planetary exploration, we haven't fully decided how that's going to work yet, so that's not in the prototype. It will be as soon as we get the environmental bits done and work out how it's all going to work. But yeah, so I'll just go through each of these bits. So at the start, we call a rigid body, and we also call each of the thrusters, and we set them to false. This is the thrusters, of course, are these 4 bits here, and they work in a similar manner to how these ones do in the Fortitude. Essentially, they only appear when you're firing them. As you can see, up, down, left, right, they only appear when you're holding the button down. And that's just to give a visual representation of the fact that you're firing thrusters. And here we've got the controls. So if you press the W key, it'll add a force to push you upwards. A key is left, S key is down, D key is right. So it's just adding a force, pushing you around depending on which thrusters you're using to move in which direction. This is mainly just Unity's physics working here. We don't actually have to do too much because it's already in place. It's just adding a force in the vacuum that is our current environment. And this is how movement will work in space. There will be a separate movement system, as I mentioned earlier, for planetary exploration, because there will be gravity and things like that. But we'll do that when we get to it. And then this is just when the keys go up. So once you let go of the W key, it sets the thruster thing to false. And, I forgot to mention this actually. When you're moving forwards, or any direction really, it sets the is foot thrust boolean to true, so which is a fuel system thing that I'll go through in a second. So what that basically means is it consumes fuel, and then when you let the key go, it stops consuming fuel, and as I said, stops the thruster thing. And then here we've got a little collision thing. Let me just read it so I can see what it actually is. Collide with the player, the fuel system's being at 0. Ah, yes, this is refueling the suit. So if you enter the on-trigger circle collider of the ship, and the Fortitude, i.e. the ship, has more than 0 fuel, then you can refuel your suit. So this is suit refueling, essentially. And then a similar thing here. If you collide with something with the on-trigger circle or whatever collider it is now, collider of something with fuel, i.e. the triangle that we saw earlier, the refuel triangle, then start refueling the Fortitude. So that's the remote control refueling that we saw earlier. And then this is just doing the opposite. If you exit the collider, you're no longer refueling, and same with that one there. And then this is just the death of the player. If you collide with something tagged with space, which is any object in space, and your current velocity is greater than 2, you you're deados. Ain't nothing gonna save you. And then this is just calling the velocity of the player, so we can see it at all times. And of course, just calling the movement function that we've set up here. So it's pretty complex but simple, if that makes sense. It relies a lot on Unity's own inbuilt physics, because thankfully Unity builds in a lot of real-time physics, which is very, very good for us, because we can just harness them, as our game is primarily physics-based. Now, this script, Vehicle Transition, is the heart of this new update. Basically, it enables the player to switch between perspectives and using the astronaut and the Fortitude. And okay. This is primarily done by the vehicle switch function here. If the player is in the ship, if the in-ship boolean is true, then set the parents of the on foot, that is the astronaut here. Set the parent of the astronaut to the Fortitude. So what that basically means is the astronaut is parented to the Fortitude, so he is dragged around with the ship. So wherever the ship goes, the astronaut is dragged around with him. It's basically giving the illusion that the astronaut is actually getting inside the ship, because he technically is. I don't suppose it's actually really an illusion, because he is being parented and therefore he's getting inside the ship. But yeah, that's what that does. And then this just sets the local position transform to 0000. 3 zeros, not 2. Yeah, so that just puts the astronaut there, so you can't see him anymore. And of course, again, adds the illusion that he's inside the ship. And then this disables all his colliders, so that he's not going to cause any physics issues while he's parented to the ship. And then this final bit here enables the space navigation script, so that you can move the ship around. And then this is the opposite. If you're no longer in the ship, then the on foot, the astronaut, is no longer parented to the ship. Crikey, whoops. All his colliders are enabled, and the space navigation script is disabled. Oh, and I should point out as well that the foot navigation script is disabled here and enabled here, so you can move around while he's on foot. And then we call that function here, and then this bit here is all to do with the remote control system that I showed you earlier. But not this bit though. Yeah, so this bit controls whether the player can get in and out of the ship. So basically goes, if the player presses the E key and the is within boolean is true and he's not actually already in the ship, then set in ship to true, so all that happens, and set is exiting to true. That is a boolean that we don't need anymore, I don't think. What's that one for? Oh no, that's the logic for the remote control system, because it was very, very buggy. I'll just show you the is within boolean. So basically, if the astronaut enters the on-trigger sphere collider, circle collider, of the Fortitude, then set that is within boolean to true. So basically, if the player is close to the ship, then he can get in. That's all that code really means. Otherwise, if the E key is being pressed and he is already in the ship, then set the player's position to slightly offset from the Fortitude, so that he's not starting from directly within, because colliders are weird. I'll talk about that one in a second. And set is in ship to false, because obviously the player is no longer in the ship, and set the timer to true. This bit here basically sets the current velocity of the player to the ship's current velocity. I'll just demonstrate that quickly here, because it's actually quite cool. Basically, if you're in the ship and you're moving around and you get out, as you can see, the player is still moving with the ship. It's quite a nice bit of physics there, because A, that's akin to real life, because that would happen in reality, and also means you can do like in-flight maintenance and that sort of thing. It's pretty cool. That was something that Josh suggested, this bit of code, and it's very, very cool. Right, I'm just trying to work out, is this timer a bit of old code? What is that for? I wrote this 3 days ago, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what this timer does. Okay, well, we won't worry about it now unless I see it later on. But this is the remote control bit here. Basically, if you're pressing the E key, is within this false, say you are not within the ship's on-trigger circle collider, and you're not in the ship, and you're not already remote controlling the ship, then disable foot navigation so you're no longer moving around with the player, and enable the ship. So what that basically means is you can control the ship remotely when you're far away from it. And then this just does the opposite here. If you press the E key and you're already remote controlling the ship, then it puts control back to the astronaut. So yeah, so that's how the remote control and getting in that the ship works. This, as I said, the script is pretty much the heart of this update. And yeah, let's move on. So now let's check the fuel system script. Now this is one we've had earlier, obviously, but I've done a bit of an edit to it and added the player's fuel system, the on-field one. And this has been done by adding another couple of floats up here, the foot refuel level and the foot fuel level, as well as the foot thrust consumption. And we've also added a bit here. Basically, if is foot thrust is true, if the player is foot thrusting and moving around, which is set up here in this script, then set foot thrust consumption to 0.5F, otherwise it is 0. And this is, yeah, this is setting up the suit consumption as well, and then obviously refueling and things like that. This is done in a pretty similar way to how the original fuel system was done in Prototype 0.2, so I won't go into too much detail. As you can see, it's done, yeah, pretty similar here. Total foot consumption is the foot thrust consumption time plus the refuel level, and then that adds a number together, essentially. And then that is taken to the, well, it's taken away from the foot fuel level, total fuel consumption times time with delta time, so it changes in real time. And here we have got, yep, if the foot fuel level is currently less than or equal to 0, then set it to 0, and set the is foot empty boolean to true. And as well, and this is important, destroy the player. Because if you run out of fuel, you're dead. This isn't like inside the Fortitude, where you'll just run out of fuel and you won't be able to move around. If you run out of fuel, because fuel is everything in this game, fuel in the suit controls life support. And if you don't have any fuel, you ain't got no life support. So we felt that was kind of it's a tough thing to add, like not as in it increases difficulty quite a lot, because obviously if you hit 0, you're dead. But we thought it was fair and reasonable, frankly. Like if you run out of oxygen in real life in space, you're deados. It's just gonna happen. So difficult but reasonable. And similar thing kind of here. If the foot fuel level is set to greater than or equal to 100, then just set it to 100. So the maximum minimum is 0 and 100. It doesn't go above or below that. Oh, and I should mention here, these are the refuel bubbles, the auras that you saw around the player and the ship while refueling is in progress. Basically, if the player is refueling, then set them to true. Yeah, and that's the changes we've made there. Camera controller, we've made a few-ish changes. We've commented out all the previous code and instead added a scrolling camera that I demonstrated earlier. Basically, it sets the orthographic size of the camera, which is here. The orthographic size, where is it? Yeah, there. That's basically how zoomed out or in it is. And we set that to a float. And then we've basically we've set it to the, yeah, sorry, we haven't set it to a float. We've set it to the scroll wheel, get axis, how much you scroll, times sensitivity, which is the float I was talking about. Sensitivity was set to 5. That basically means you can scroll in and out. And we've also, because the orthographic size is a bit weird, when you zoom out, the further you zoom out, the slower the zooming gets. I don't really know why. So this bit of code here is basically sent to combat this. Basically, if the orthographic size is greater than 40, then set the scrolling settings to 42. It basically increases the sensitivity. Oh no, that's what this bit is. Never mind. Yeah, if it's greater than 20, i.e. if the size is greater than 20, then increase the sensitivity to make it more smooth. Because the zooming thing's a bit weird. I don't know. It's Unity being Unity. We just had to combat it. And yeah, now I remember. These bits actually set the maximum and minimum zoom. So the minimum zoom you can have, which I'll show you here, is 1. That is the most you can zoom in, and then the max you can zoom out is 40. That's what that bit of code does, basically. And then this bit here is pretty simple. Basically, if you're in the ship, then set the perspective of the camera to the ship. And if you're not in the ship, set the perspective of the camera to the on-foot, i.e. the astronaut. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh no, we've got a bit of speed GUI. This is pretty simple. It just gets the foot fuel as a float, takes the fuel system foot fuel level that we established here, and adds it to the GUI, or GUI. I don't know how you pronounce it. And yeah, what that does is, come on, just adds the suit fuel to the bottom there, which goes down, as you can see, when the player is using fuel. And that's it, really. That is all the code demonstrated. So to sum up, this prototype, getting in and out of the ship, the player's own fuel system as an astronaut, remote controlling the ship, scrolling camera, and refueling. Oh my god. And refueling remotely. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in prototype 0.4.